Welcome to Hidden Dread. A cruise ship is often described as a floating city of dreams. It carries with it the laughter of families, the clinking of glasses, the smell of salt in the air, and the constant hum of engines cutting through the water. Passengers board with excitement, ready to escape the pressures of life back home, believing they are stepping into paradise. But behind the glittering lights and smiling staff, there's a darkness few ever see. Because when you are out at sea, cut off from the world, anything can happen, and not every passenger who board will ever return. In 2013, a 32-year-old woman named Elena embarked on her first solo cruise. Friends described her as cautious yet adventurous, someone who loved life but never took reckless risks. She saved for months to afford the trip, imagining 7 carefree days across the Caribbean, days filled with sun, music, and new memories. For the first 3 days, everything was picture perfect. Elena lounged on the deck with a book, joined group excursions, and even sang at karaoke night. Her photos showed her beaming, the ocean behind her, the horizon endless. But by the 4th night, her smile began to fade. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. In the crowded restaurants, the packed theaters, even on the quiet upper deck, she kept noticing the same man. He was tall, his skin pale, and though the ship was humid and warm, he wore a dark jacket. He never smiled, never spoke. He only lingered, always a few feet away, his eyes fixed on her. At first, she told herself it was coincidence. A ship this size meant running into the same people more than once. But soon, the encounters became too frequent to ignore. At breakfast, he sat 2 tables away. At the casino, he stood behind her for nearly an hour without playing a single game. On the pool deck, she caught him watching from the railing above. Wherever Elena went, there he was. Then, something happened that shattered her fragile sense of safety. One evening, she returned to her cabin to find the door slightly open. Inside, her suitcase was unzipped, clothes shifted as if someone had been searching through them. Her valuables, passport, wallet, and phone remained untouched, but the violation was clear. She knew she had locked the door. With shaking hands, she reported it to guest services, but her concerns were dismissed. Perhaps she had left the door ajar, they said. Maybe housekeeping forgot to close it. But Elena knew better. That night, she shoved a chair against the cabin door and barely slept. Her ears tuned to every sound in the hallway. The cruise, once a dream, was turning into something far more sinister, and the feeling of being hunted was only growing stronger, to be continued in part 2. Elena tried to convince herself she was safe. After all, she was surrounded by thousands of people, families with children, honeymoon couples, elderly travelers, all of them enjoying themselves without a care in the world. But late at night, when the ship's corridors grew quiet and the laughter faded into the ocean wind, her fear returned. She knew the man in the dark jacket was still out there, and she knew he was watching. On the 5th night, she decided to distract herself by attending one of the ship's live theater shows. The auditorium was packed with passengers eager for music, comedy, and the illusion of carefree joy. For a moment, as the lights dimmed and performers stepped onto the stage, Elena let herself relax. But then her gaze drifted across the rows of faces, and there he was. The man, his posture stiff, his expression blank, his eyes fixed on her. And this time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men sat nearby, both in dark clothing, both staring. Her heart raced. She stood quickly, mumbling apologies as she slipped past other guests, and fled the theater before the performance had even begun. She hurried through the winding hallways, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in her ears, until she reached her cabin. Locking the door behind her, she collapsed onto the bed, her hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. She sent a message to her best friend back home. "I feel like I'm being followed. If anything happens to me, tell them to check the cameras." That single message would be her final contact with the outside world. The next morning, Elena was gone. She didn't appear for breakfast, and when her cabin attendant entered to clean, he found her room eerily still. Her passport lay neatly on the nightstand. Her wallet and phone were untouched. The bed looked as though it had been left in a rush, sheets half pulled back. But Elena herself had vanished. Word spread quickly among the crew, though passengers were told nothing at first. A search was organized. Every deck checked, every corner of the ship scoured. Announcements were made over the intercom, but no one had seen her. By afternoon, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Someone had disappeared. A woman traveling alone. Some guests brushed it off as gossip, while others grew uneasy, remembering the faint sounds of shouting they thought they'd heard the night before. The ship's management finally addressed the passengers, their tone calm and carefully measured. A guest was missing. They said it was possible she had accidentally gone overboard. These things happen sometimes, rare but not unheard of. But behind the scenes, crew members were restricting access to certain areas, quietly locking hallways, and escorting passengers away from decks that were suddenly deemed under maintenance. Several people reported seeing strange things that day. One couple claimed they saw security guards speaking in hushed voices near the stern, their faces pale, their eyes darting toward the ocean. Another passenger swore she saw a crew member carrying a large, heavy bag into a restricted storage room. And then there was the man in the dark jacket. Multiple guests reported seeing him again, calmly smoking on the upper deck, his expression blank, his posture relaxed, as if nothing unusual had happened. But when investigators later reviewed the ship's passenger list, no record of him existed. Officially, the man had never been on board. Elena's disappearance was reported to authorities, but the situation grew complicated almost immediately. The ship was registered under a foreign flag, and it was sailing international waters. Jurisdiction was unclear. Should the case be handled by the flag country, by Elena's home country, or by the nation closest to the ship at the time? Weeks passed as her family begged for answers, but the cruise line remained vague. They insisted she had most likely fallen overboard. They provided no evidence, no footage, and no explanation of how a cautious, careful woman could simply vanish, leaving behind every personal item she owned. Passengers who were on board that week said the atmosphere shifted after her disappearance. The cruise continued, of course. The shows went on, the bars stayed open, the pools filled with laughter, but beneath it all was a current of unease. People avoided walking the corridors alone. Parents kept their children close. At night, when the waves crashed against the hull, many passengers lay awake, wondering if somewhere in that vast ocean, Elena's body was drifting silently in the dark. Her best friend released a final message to the public, the text she had sent in fear: "If anything happens to me, check the cameras." It spread online, igniting outrage. Why had the footage not been released? Why had the cruise line been so quick to dismiss her case as an accident? And most importantly, why did so many passengers recall seeing the same mysterious man, a man who supposedly didn't exist? As the ship docked at its final port and passengers disembarked, Elena's absence was quietly noted, her belongings boxed and sent back to her grieving family. For many on that ship, it was just an unsettling memory, a story to tell friends once they returned home. But for a family, it was a beginning of a nightmare that would never end. To be continued in Part 3. Elena's disappearance should have sparked a full international investigation, but what followed was silence. Her family begged for answers, calling the cruise line, emailing authorities, demanding that someone take responsibility. Yet everywhere they turned, they were met with indifference, excuses, or outright denial. It was as if Elena had simply slipped into the sea, her existence erased as quickly as the ship cut through the waves. Cruise lines have long been criticized for their secrecy. Unlike crime committed on land, incidents at sea exist in the gray zone of international law. In Elena's case, her disappearance fell between jurisdictions, leaving her family trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare. The cruise company insisted their investigation found nothing suspicious. They claimed security footage showed no evidence of foul play, though they refused to release it to the family. To them, the case was closed. But rumors continued to swirl. Other passengers began to speak out, sharing what they had seen. One woman described hearing a loud thud outside her cabin that night, followed by hurried footsteps and the sound of something heavy being dragged. Another insisted she saw crew members lowering a covered object into a lifeboat in the early hours of the morning. And then there were the sightings of the man in the dark jacket, who many swore had been everywhere Elena went, but whose name appeared nowhere on the records. The theories grew darker with each passing day. Some believed Elena had been targeted by human traffickers, a victim chosen for her solitude, easy to isolate and easier to silence. Others were certain she had been murdered on board, her body hidden deep within the ship until it could be disposed of at the next port. The most chilling theory, however, was that she had been alive when she went overboard, thrown into the black, endless water, her voice swallowed by the roar of the engines, her desperate cries lost in the wind. Her family refused to let her memory fade. They spoke to the media, demanding answers, warning others about the dangers of cruising. They shared her final message, the haunting words she had written in fear. "If anything happens to me, check the cameras." That plea became a rallying cry, a reminder how easily stories like Elena's are silenced. But as months passed, the story faded from headlines. New tragedies replaced it. New vacations were booked. The cruise industry continued, its reputation untarnished, its ships filled once again with eager travelers. Elena became just another name on a growing list of people who boarded a cruise ship and never returned. And that's the part that chills the most. She is not alone. Hundreds of passengers have vanished from cruise ships over the past 2 decades, their disappearances unsolved, their families left with nothing but questions. Some cases are explained away as accidents, others as suicides, but too many remain shrouded in mystery. Too many echo the same disturbing pattern: missing belongings, dismissed complaints, missing security footage, and silence from those in power. To this day, Elena's body has never been found. Officially, she is listed as missing, presumed dead. But for those who remember her story, the truth is far more sinister. She has become a legend whispered among frequent travelers, a warning shared in hushed tones by those who know the dangers hidden beneath the glittering facade of cruise vacations. So the next time you step onto a ship, remember Elena, the forgotten passenger. Remember her final night, her desperate text, her sudden disappearance. Remember the silence of the cruise line, the strange man who never existed, the whispers of passengers who saw too much. And as you stand on the deck, Staring out into the endless black of the ocean, ask yourself, how safe are you really when you are surrounded by strangers, cut off from the world, with nothing but water in every direction? Because on the open sea, paradise can turn to horror in an instant. And once the darkness swallows you, there may be no one left to tell your story. The Dread Never Sleeps. Subscribe to Hidden Dread.